So the next one is from Jason Pond. This is an interesting one. So he says, this is on a longer piece of content. 我和爸爸 said, I cried in Chinese after listening to this. So this is an English thing he wants to say. So it's a very relatively moving dialogue. And he wanted to say, I cried, but he's trying to be funny. I cried in Chinese, not my English cry. So it's quite a funny joke in English, right? And then he tries to say it in Chinese. And there's, Phil already replied to this, and he gave his own, he corrected some of the grammatical errors and things like that. But the major challenge that Jason was facing is that you can't actually really translate what he's trying to say in Chinese. And this is something that once you start to get to the intermediate stage, which Jason is definitely well into, you start to have all these tools at your disposal. I can make sentences. I can maybe start having conversations. I can understand a ton. But one of the things you have to start accepting once you get to that high level is that there are some things, many things, that simply cannot be translated. And I come across this all the time where I want to say something because English, like my friend who speaks French and English, he says French is just the best language for swearing. I don't know why. I don't speak French. But he says there's nothing more satisfying than swearing in French. And I was like, okay, fair enough, good for you. But he says telling jokes in English is the best language for telling jokes, in his opinion. That's what he thinks, And he speaks fluent Chinese, French, and English. And I was like, that's a really interesting way. And he quoted that scene where the Merovingian or whatever, one of the bad guys from The Matrix Reloaded, he swears this is really long swear in French. And he can quote it perfectly, my friend. He was like, there's just nothing better. I was like, okay, interesting. So English is for joking. English is great for joking or banter. Maybe Chinese isn't. Chinese is not, at least, especially not from an English person's perspective. So if you try and say a joke, which is funny, I'll say that, Jason, your sentence there in English is funny. It just doesn't work. I tried as well. Phil tried. I actually took the liberty of editing his sentence, which he said, because it's grammatic. Of course, Phil's a highly advanced Chinese speaker, and his sentence was grammatically right. But I said it out loud, and it's just like, it just doesn't work. Not because it's not grammatically correct. It's just because Chinese people just wouldn't say this. It's just not something. They just wouldn't get this joke that he's trying to communicate. So he said something like, I can't remember what he said now. I've deleted it. I probably should have noted it down before. But it was like Yong Zhongwen Lai Ku or something. It just didn't sound right? So I as I often do, I thought of an idea myself, and then I consulted my wife to make sure that I was on track. And she helped me translate it a bit better. So she said, 这个故事 this story 把我的中文 took my Chinese 都感动出来了. And due to me being moved by the story, made my Chinese sort of come out, become better, bloom, as it were. And you see me try and explain, and that's the Chinese way of making that funny, and it's not what Jason meant, but it's as close as we could get. We tried for a minute or two. So, that doesn't mean that the sentence I said in Chinese or the sentence that Jason said is not funny, or one is not funnier than the other. It's just that you have to accept those limitations, and it can be frustrating. You're like, well, I want to say this, blah, 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 blah. It's grammatically correct. So, yeah, but a Chinese person wouldn't understand what you said, because that's not their culture to say that in that specific way. And that's when you go from not just language skill, cultural understanding. I think I mentioned this a couple of podcasts ago. It's not just that once you start mastering the language, that feels awesome. But then you have another challenge, which is culture and what Chinese people, the way Chinese people actually think. And that's where you need to start. The only way you can really master that is by consuming a ton of real Chinese content and interacting a ton with real Chinese people. And that's a good thing, by the way, because it's very fun to do all of that. Okay, but that's where the law of diminishing returns comes in, and that's sort of where you dedicate 10, 20 years. You can master the language, I believe, in a few years. So you can reach a good level of fluency, and then even a great level of fluency. But if you want to start mastering what to say when and how to make the right certain Chinese person laugh at a certain thing, that takes real dedication. But that's something to shoot for. That's a way of adding a goal on once you reach your goal. So try not to get too hung up on translations, Jason. I know it's a it's a real tough one to get your head around. It was for me, but yeah.